Hey, good morning and welcome. I'm Kathryn Perry, your host of the Daily One Command. And today's topic is building on what we talked about yesterday in the abundant mindset, and that is awareness. So, all of our commands and everything that we're doing is going to be based on this idea about awareness. And let's start with what lens we are looking through today. Pay attention to this picture. We're going to talk about it in a moment, but maybe not in a way that you expect. Awareness allows us to get outside of our mind and observe it in action. And so when we are talking about, like, we're working with the one command and the 6 steps to Theta, we are shifting our attention from our ordinary thinking into a new level of awareness of possibility. Okay. We see this in many teachings across the board. You are greater than you know. There's a power within you that is so great, and you are the universe experiencing yourself. So we are getting these clues about our greatness and the power that we have, the power in our words, what happens when we direct our thoughts, and we can accept these pieces. And the thing that ties it all together is awareness. Okay. Now, right now, in your ordinary beta awareness, right now, you and I are talking, and at any given point, you are consciously aware of 7 to 9 things at a time. And in fact, if you try to divide your attention and do multitasking, as we used to talk about a lot. Now that's kind of like, don't multitask. Why? Because they showed what happens to your brain when you multitask. You actually have less cognitive ability than if your brain was on drugs. Okay. So what science has found, it's better to focus on one thing at a time. So in your ordinary beta, at any given moment, 7 to 9 things that you can be consciously aware of. Is everything else happening around you? Yes. Are you aware of it? Maybe peripherally, right? But it's not anything that you're giving your full attention to. But if you think about you're working and suddenly you hear a dripping sound and you go, what is that? Your attention gets pulled away. You're aware of the dripping. It's indicating there's something not right and you want to continue to work. And the sound of the dripping gets louder, 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 right? Because something's bumping into our awareness has gotten divided. How do we feel? Excited, happy? No, we feel annoyed, worried, frustrated. Notice whatever emotions come up, those emotions are always running just below the surface. So if you look at how somebody handles disappointment news or bad news or something that, in the unexpected, and they go, rah! And you go, why did you get mad? I don't know. I just wasn't expecting it right then. It just came up out of the blue. And you're going, well, it's just a small thing. And what's happening is that that upset, maybe that shame, maybe that fear, maybe that doubt that you weren't aware of before suddenly makes itself known. Okay? It's always there, but we haven't been aware of it. We're only aware of it when we give attention to it, and then it feels like starts kind of taking over, and we don't see ourselves that way, so we're going to get control of that. Let's tamp that down. Besides that, when we were little, how did your parents respond to your upset, to your fear, to your tears, to your needs? That feeling and that belief about not being responded to not being cared for, not being seen, that's below the surface of all that upset. But we're not usually aware of it. But we may run that story, but we're running it unconsciously. So even if someone's telling you their story and you think, yeah, they know what's going on, they don't hear themselves telling the story. They are merely like a record player or a cassette player. Now they're, running the MP3 file, right? And they're not even aware of any nuances or different information because they're locked in their perspective and they're stuck in the awareness that they had of themselves in the situation at the time it happened, no matter what the age. We talk a lot about what happened before the age of 7, but we have things that happen that we're not really in our awareness, we're not in our mastery, we're in almost a trance of our conditioning. And it may take some time before you look back on something and you go, oh, is that what that was about? Or some new information comes in, or you go, I never knew that. I never heard that. I don't remember that happening. If you've ever, years later, found out that your crush also liked you, and then when they said, why don't you come by sometime? You went, oh, that's cool, but you're probably busy. And you didn't realize your crush was like going, hi, come on. I like you too. And whatever reason, your beliefs kept you from being aware of that invitation. And then years later, it's like, oh my gosh. And you might think that about jobs or other opportunities. You can go, at the time, I couldn't see it. Just about every person I know has that big opportunity moment, and they had to turn it down and they missed out on some giant opportunity. Bonnie Strelo, who's in the One Command world, tells a story about her ex-husband meeting Bill Gates, and Bill Gates had come to his firm, and I don't remember what he did, if he was a banker or an attorney, coming for funding, and he offered stocks in his new company, Microsoft. And they laughed him out of the room. And at the time, it was like, who does this guy think he is? And never thought anything about it, never really bothered to tell Bonnie about it until years later, when stocks started splitting and people who were like receptionists were suddenly getting $1 million payouts. And he went, oh, wow, I should have paid attention to that. I remember when he came to the office. Well, he didn't have an awareness, right? And then when Bonnie saw, it's like, oh my gosh, do you realize that that little stock would have been worth about $5 million? That first created some upset for her. And that could happen for you. Why? Because that upset, that what's unresolved, is always there just below the surface to meet whatever new understanding you have. And so, how can we shift that? We shift it by coming into the observer part of our mind, by shifting our awareness. Okay? So if someone's upset, let's say I found out my husband passed up the chance for, stock that somehow in his crystal ball he couldn't see would someday be worth millions of dollars. And oh yeah, the loan would have been paid off, and oh yeah, all the interest would have been made. And then there's regret or anger or shame that somehow he couldn't look at that. He's looking at through the awareness of someone who loses and misses out, through a victim mindset. Remember, I don't know if you were part of this yesterday, but we talked about, we could look at beliefs, but we want to look more at orientation. How are we seeing the world? What direction are we facing in? How are we meeting limited circumstances with our unlimited mind? And so when we're meeting that upset, that fear, that doubt, that worry, when we're meeting our lack and our limitation, and we feel bad, guilty, frustrated, angry. What's wrong with me? Why does everybody else get what they want? That's victim mentality. I couldn't help it. There was stuff outside of me. People said no. The circumstances didn't seem right. It feels like everything's just outside of your control. You're inside a paradigm, and it's being run by your ego. And your ego's has self-identified as someone who is in lack, unloved, uncared for, unsupported, any of those things that we tell ourselves about who we are. That's our ego self. That's our small me. Okay. We have a greater awareness. We have the observer part. When we start moving up in lowering our brainwave and raising our vibe, when we first start going, well, what would be different if that happened to me today, knowing what I know? What would I do? What would I expect? Well, we always hope and like to think that we would absolutely do it differently because we're grown, we have a greater perspective, new awareness of things, right? But we really can't know. So what do we have to do? We have to put ourselves in different scenarios, and that's where the power of our imagination, and we start expanding our sphere of influence, and we start at first looking at our experience through a different lens. So a good metaphor for that would be, let's say that you're in a theater and you're watching a movie. And you're in the movie and you're in a movie theater, you're watching the movie, you're having your experience. You go, oh, this is so cool. I love this. This is great. And you're in the movie. And then suddenly you watch somebody lift up another human being with one arm and hold them over a cliff and shake them around. And for a moment, your mind might say, well, that's not real. That's not how things go. And what did you do? You just broke out of your suspended disbelief because you entered into this reality and you say, I'm going to just go ahead and accept this world as is. But then you go, wait, let me get back into this. And if you've ever sat next to the person in the theater who goes, what the hell are they doing? Humans can't do that. And you go, shush. I'm watching my show. Shush. I don't want to explain what happened and what you missed while you were asking me questions about the scene before. Shush. Watch, and you'll catch up. We're doing that to ourselves all the time. But then we are in between these two worlds, and that's kind of like being an alpha. It's like, yeah, I see that, but that's my real world's not like that. I'm going to call this the pretend world. That's separate. There's enough stuff I recognize. And there's some things I'm going to accept, but there's some things there's like, yeah, that would be cool. But I'm not going to accept that. Okay? When we go into the greater mind, into the theta brainwave, we're in that higher observer. So then we are in that same movie theater, but back in the old days, I don't know if you ever got to go into an older movie theater that had the balconies, or you've been in one of the cool old theaters and watched a show where they had the balcony above. You're like being in that balcony watching two people watch a movie, and you see what's happening, and you're just noticing the interaction. And yet, if you wanted to shift your awareness and focus, you could probably tune into the communication, but you could definitely track and be aware through your emotions. Yeah, I recognize that behavior, that kind of interchange. It looks like that one's wanting to watch a show. The other one's like wants to talk to them about the show, and they're like, that one's trying to get them to stop, right? And there's no judgment. Like, yep, I see that's happening. Yep, that's happened to me. And then they're watching the other show and they're seeing how that show is sending a message right? And so you're in this observer and you're watching it, but you're watching it all from a neutral place. Okay? But here's the key difference. You in that higher observer place, you are not the little me that's in the drama. You're in the observer, observing your mind. And you have an awareness and you have the ability to ask new questions, but also influence the outcomes in a really powerful way. So if you were to, in that observer, start staring intently at the back of the head of one of the people in the movie theater, it wouldn't take long before that person in theater would go, there's something on my, what's going on here? Is there something on my, why is my attention suddenly on my head? Okay, I don't know what that is. Wait, is somebody looking at me? What's happening? Through our attention, that's how we start. That's a little teeny baby, minute example of our ability to influence and make changes. So if you were in the movie theater and you're watching this and you see what happens, and that's kind of like us watching our movies, our memories, we go, okay, let me think about that. Now I was looking at it through that perspective, and you start asking other people. Some people will not have a memory of it at all. They go, I don't even know where you came up with that. And someone else will go, no, it was this way, this way. And you go, I don't remember that. Literally had a conversation with my daughter day before yesterday about when we made the decision to move from Seattle back to Texas. At the time, I was working in the One Command with Asar Lovejoy, an active daily partner. My daughter Lauren happened to be working for her daughter Ananda in her medical billing business. It was fantastic. And then I got to, Maddie would come visit, and it was great. But I was kind of starting to get that pull, and I had this feeling that it was time to go back home. Some certain things were kind of happening with my mom, not bad, but it was like mom's all of a sudden wanting to spend, like do trips and spend all this time together and wants to make memories. And there's all this stuff. I feel like there's something going on. And Lauren was like, I'm really tired. I need extra help and support. I just want to be with my family. I just feel like if I had more family around, that could kind of help my support network. And I went, okay, that's cool. We made the decision to move back home. That's how I remembered it. My daughter Lauren said, Mom, you came to me and you said you had a dream about Mima dying, and you felt like it was time to come home. And then you gave notice to my company that I was leaving. And I went, what? I don't remember that. No, that didn't happen. That's not how that was. In fact, I was wondering, like, hey, we're moving. Let's look at new opportunities. I had just come from California where every person I met was a multimillionaire, and they were thrilled to meet me. I was like, I want to go to California and sit around multimillionaires. And she said, what are you doing? We're going back home. We're going home. I went, oh, okay. I thought, well, no wonder you were mad at me. But I literally have no memory of it happening like that. So I had to think about, well, maybe there's something I said that she got that message that way. But maybe I communicated that, but I wasn't aware of what I was communicating at the time. Does that make sense? So that really got me thinking about it, and I still can't find that memory. But the result, that it's time to come home, we came home, and my mom did pass away 2 years later. And we were really glad that we got to have that time together, that my granddaughter Maddie, who at the time was only 5, got to know her and spend time with her and, go shopping and play and spend the night with grandma, do all that stuff. That was part of our intention. We had some other intentions, like, let's buy a house for you. It's time to buy you a house. I had in my mind, I had an awareness about a grant program in the city of Fort Worth that was $10,000 grant towards your closing costs. Part would be closing costs, part towards the purchase price. And I held that awareness. I talked to everybody about it. Nobody knew what the hell I was talking about when we started looking for a house. And finally, I said, I know that there is this exists. And so I said, I took my awareness and I put my attention to finding the house. I typed in a certain phrase. Someone came up and they said, we work with grants in Fort Worth. I said, there's my people. I typed in the contact form and something about it. Because normally I would be like, oh, I'll do that. I said, no, I think I'm going to call and leave a message. So I had an awareness that I need to take an extra action. When I made the phone call to the number, the lady later told me that she never answers the phone in the evening. This was like at 8 o'clock at night. But there was something that she felt aware of. There's a way the phone rang. She said it sounded different to her and it got her attention. So her awareness met my awareness. Guess what happened? Turned out 2 days earlier, City of Fort Worth had found that they still had 4 grants available because that program had gotten shut down. No wonder no one knew what I was talking about. We found the house and put in the application within 24 hours, and she was the second person through the door. We got grant number 2 of the 4 that were left. And this is how operating in that awareness. You can't trust your memories, but you can, when you start connecting into that greater self and attuning to that and start being aware of the impulses that seem to be coming and aligning to your greater good, when you start shifting your awareness to that, your attention will follow. And then your stories about yourself and your memories start aligning to that. And that happens from the past. But guess what? Everything in the future starts lining up to that too. And so if right now you are not experiencing the outcomes, but you're having more upset, fear, doubt, maybe even shame, because you know better, you know that this stuff's possible and something in you is keeping you from getting it. You're not being bad. You're not wrong. You're orienting your attention. You're orienting yourself to the wrong direction. And so going through the 6 steps of the one command, process 6 steps to Theta, and you get into that daily practice like we're doing here, that's going to start connecting into your greater awareness. You're going to start observing and seeing what happens. And then through your word, through your thoughts, as you're aligning to that great I am that is the creator, you are going to start influencing your outcomes. This is how it happens. This is how you do it. So if you're noticing that you're reacting, your attention is anywhere but what your goal is, if you're noticing that when you try to think about and remember a time when, none of that matters. You try to go to the past to find the clues about your future. You can. I pay more attention to, when I'm working with my clients one-on-one, how do they tell the story? How do they have themselves cast in the story? And it doesn't take, they'll even say, what's going on? What did you need to do? So, well, this is happening. I was like, okay, we'll work on that. Well, wait, this other thing's happening. Oh, okay. And then there's this other thing, and they're all 3 exactly the same issue, even though they feel very different to the person. When you're able to go into the observer and look at it differently, you'll start seeing the common threads. Okay? Are you ready to find that thread that connects you to your greatness and that power within? Let's connect to that today. Hello, Mr. David. Excuse me, I forgot to get a drink of water. Okay. So our awareness allows us to get to outside of our mind and observe it in action. I want you to remember, I ask you to remember this image. We are tracking everything all the time. what you want to attract, create, or manifest is already here, but your awareness is not attuned to it. So I wonder what would happen if you had a new awareness of the possibility, of your gift, of the path, of the blueprint. I don't know. I don't know what would happen. I don't know how I have a new awareness. I only know I do now, and I am fulfilled. I don't know how to attune my awareness to that which I desire. I don't know how I train my awareness to support the greatness within and the truth of my greatness. I only know I am living in a greater awareness now, and I am fulfilled. Ooh. So we're going to go through the 6 steps of the one command. You're already there. You're already right here with me. But just become aware of your body. Yep, this beautiful human body, and just be aware of how your body is resting on whatever surface you're on. Maybe you're in your car, you're on your sofa, maybe you haven't gotten out of bed yet, your favorite chair, wherever you are. Just be aware of how your feet are positioned, your hips, your shoulders. Take a breath. Bring your attention to your heart as you align to your purpose. Our purpose now is how to become aware of the greatness within. How can we be aware of the truth of the greatness within and our greater mind? So just align to that purpose. Also want to invite you to become aware of your connection to Source. Eyes closed. Lift your chin slightly. And with your eyes closed, roll your eyes up as if you're trying to look up through the top of your head. You may be aware that there's this stillness around you and inside of you. And I want to invite you to shift your awareness, break through the darkness into the light of pure, open potential. Eyes still up as we state the one command. I don't know how I have the ability to operate in my greater awareness. I don't know how I am observing my mind and my thoughts. I don't know how to observe my life and my patterns from a state of greater awareness. I only know I do now, and I am fulfilled. I'm just going to let that go. We're going to let that expand. And I don't know how I'm aware of the opportunities that I seek. I don't know how I am aware of beneficial relationships. I don't know how I'm aware of the invitations that I ignored or didn't even see before. I only know I am aware of the goodness, of the blessings, of the opportunities in my life now, and I am fulfilled. And just let your eyes relax. Let that expand out to an idea even greater that serves more good in its fulfillment. And just imagine that you're coming back into your body like you felt very expanded. Now just bring your attention back to your heart. and just start to receive with gratitude this new awareness, this understanding. Keep breathing. And I like to say thank you, thank you. And I'll even sometimes reach out and pull it to me with my arms. I'll start actively pulling those blessings to me. Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. And then what's that? What's going to start unwinding and releasing is already unwinding and releasing all the way from the teeny tiny DNA master strand all the way out to the cells, unwinding in the energy field all around you. And now we're just going to let this new awareness, this new capability, this greater capacity to operate in this higher awareness to start to rewind and align and integrate. And bring your attention back to your heart and do an internal check-in. And when you think about where you have been allowing your attention to go, what are you aware of now? What do you know that maybe you didn't know before? Of course, we always encourage everyone to keep a journal of your commands. Use the worksheet that I provided. And of course, the 7th step is inspired action. If suddenly you have this awareness of something you recognize, your intuition starts coming online, be ready for that new idea or that inspiration or opportunity. So that an example would be if suddenly you have an awareness of, like, you go, wow, I haven't thought about this person in a long time. That's an opportunity being brought into your awareness. You don't know what it is, but pick up the phone, send a text, shoot an email out, take action, and see what that's about. When you start practicing and acting on that awareness, you start getting feedback, and that helps you to start attuning to this conversation that's happening between your higher, greater self, your ordinary thinking yourself, and your little tiny ego self. And of course, if I could be of any help or support to you in that, please be sure and let me know. And I'd love to talk to you about it. I hope that this was helpful today. I just want you to know that I appreciate you and your time with me today. And I am aware of you and I witness the greatness within you. And so until next time, this is Kathryn Perry, the Big Vision Coach. Bye-bye.